Welcome to Pike Creek Farm. My name is Renee, and today I am going to can some basically coleslaw. It's called Dixie Relish in the Ball Book of Preserving, the blue book. And it has cabbage and green peppers, red peppers. You can do any mixture of those. In fact, you could even do a hot pepper if you wanted. It has onions. And you chop this stuff up and you put a salt brine over it and let it sit for an hour. So I'm going to do this before church today, get everything chopped up and set. I'm going to have my jars in the dishwasher getting sterilized when I'm gone. And when I come back, I can put the brine together and put it all into the jars and get it processed. This is a water bath recipe, so that makes it pretty simple. There is another recipe in this book. It's for red cabbage slaw. And I did make that, and this has spices in it like cinnamon and pickling spices, and it's really good on bratwurst and hamburgers, and we really enjoy it. But I wanted to make more like a traditional type coleslaw mix, a little sweeter and not with the spices in it. So we have a variety. Now, it is a relish, and I like vinegar slaw, so like on pulled pork sandwiches or anything like that. But some people have said that they will take this and drain it and then add mayonnaise or coleslaw dressing to it, traditional creamy one. Other people drain it and use it in stir fries and like egg roll in a bowl. So it's very versatile to have on your shelf. You can't just can cabbage straight safely. There's no tested safe recipe for that, but you can pickle it, so that's why I'm going this route. So I have my peppers. I have 3 peppers here and 2 onions and the cabbage. So I am going to chop everything up. For the red slaw, I shred, but this one does say chop, so I'm going to roughly chop the cabbage, and then I'm going to use this to chop my peppers and onions. This makes really quick work of it, and they turn out all even. I'm going to use the bigger, there's like 2 different sizes to chop. This is the small, and then there's the bigger one that I have in there. So I'm going to cut this cabbage into quarters. And let me make sure you see what we're doing. I did wash the outside, and I took off the outside leaves that were kind of dirty, and I cut the bottom flat so that I was safe. I always get a little nervous chopping up big things like this or spaghetti squash. I don't want to lose any fingers. So I'm going to cut this into wedges to start off with. And any of the excess leaves I'm going to save and take out to my chickens. They love cabbage leaves. So I'm going to cut this core out of each of these quarters. I have my dishwasher all loaded, so all I gotta do is push the button before church. My husband came down to warm up coffee and talk a little bit, so I got the rest of the cabbage completed. And now I am cutting the peppers in half and de-seeding them. I'll show you how the chopper works. I got this when I made the ball bruschetta, and it makes the tomatoes in a really nice fine chop. But for this, I'm using the wider because it says coarse. So It does have measurements on the side. So if you're trying to get a certain amount measurement, it helps you with that. I realize that I need to have more vegetables on my pantry shelf, so that's why I'm trying to do some of these things like the potatoes, and I've done carrots, and now some things with cabbage that I can do before, like the fresh, like green beans and wax beans. And tomatoes come in. I mean, what I like is right now I could go down and grab, I have turkey that I canned, and it's in broth, and I could grab a jar of that, a jar of my carrots, and a jar of potatoes, and I could make a stew, or I could make a pot pie very easily. I could warm it up and put it on top of mashed potatoes, or I can put it on biscuits, make it into a casserole with biscuits on top. So that's what I really like about having everything down there, is it makes for really quick dinners. Now I think I'm going to put the smaller chopper blade in for the onions. I don't want my onions that big. So this has a lock. I just take that out. Be very careful when you have one of these or get one when you wash it, because it's extremely sharp. So there's the smaller blade I want to use for onions. So I am going to cut these into quarters. Actually, that one's a little bigger, so. Bring over the chopper. I think I'm going to slice these this way too, so that it won't be like real long, narrow pieces. See, there they are, nice dices. I am going to mix this up. Filled the bowl pretty full. I might throw an extra jar into the canner, or the dishwasher, I mean. I'm definitely going to double the brine. 2 quarts of water in this pan. I'm going to add a half a cup of, this is pickling and canning salt. You could use kosher too, but this is finer, and I think it will dissolve better into the water. And it is already dissolving. Gonna pour it on top. Now this sits for at least an hour, and then it gets rinsed before we add the actual brine. It'd be too salty like this, but it helps pull out the extra moisture and softens it up a little bit. When I can this, and it's an optional thing, I add pickle crisp, and like the red cabbage slaw has a crunch to it. It I'm back from church. It has been over an hour, and I'm going to drain all this and rinse it so it's not too salty. That's an optional step, but I don't want it to be too salty. So it's more than what will fit in my, I have all the coleslaw mixture, the cabbage, the onions, and peppers in the colander, and I'm just giving it a quick rinse before we start the next step. We'll have to make the brine, and then this cooks in the brine for a little bit. There we go. It will drain into that bowl for... My canner is filled about halfway with water. I will get it on simmering so the water is not ice cold. We want it to be warm because we're going to have a warm coleslaw mix that we're going to put into warm jars, and then we want the water to be warm to prevent any thermal shock. I have my rack up on the edges so that the jars can go right in there and I can lower it down. And my canner is from Ball, my water bath canner, and it has a glass lid, which I really like because I can see when it comes to a full boil. And it also has, I don't know if I can show this, it's totally flat on the bottom and has a big, I don't know if you could see that, like disc on the bottom. So it's like stainless steel, heavy on the bottom, so that will work on a flat top stove. I was working on this video, doing the editing, and I realized that my phone must have glitched when it came to the part of mixing after I rinsed the vegetables, of mixing the brine and the vegetables and bringing them to a boil on the stove. I show it on the stove, but I don't show the ingredients. So after I drain the vegetables, and I'm in the Ball book on page 87, Dixie Relish, I mixed up 3/4 of sugar, 3 tablespoons of mustard seed, and I actually used 2 tablespoons and it was more than enough, and 2 tablespoons of celery seed, and 1 quart of 5% vinegar. I used apple cider vinegar. I realized after I did it, because I use that quite a bit, that if I'd used the white vinegar, it would have been a more vivid coleslaw. The colors would have stayed truer and not been muddled from the color of the apple cider vinegar. And you combine all those, the vegetable sugar and spices and vinegar, in a large saucepan, and you bring it to a simmer for 20 minutes, and then you bring it to a boil. And I'll show that in the video. I just didn't have that actual part on video for some reason. It just blipped there. So I just wanted to let you know what I did. It has been simmering, and I'm getting it up to the boil now. You don't boil it for any certain amount of time, you just let it get to that temperature. So you still don't want the vegetables all like cooked and mushy, because it is a relish or coleslaw mixture. So we are almost at the point where we can start jarring up. You don't have to boil the lids anymore, but when I am doing water bath, I do just let them sit in some hot water until I go to use them. With pressure canning, you don't need to, and this is probably overkill. It doesn't hurt it, Ball says, but I just feel better. I guess it's a habit to put them in some hot water to soften up the seal. And there is the magnetic lid lifter. So I'm all ready now. I have the canner on. You can see steam is starting, so it's starting to get warm in there. This is, I can feel the heat from this now. Just need to get it to that boil, and we will start packing the jars. The mixture is just starting to come to a boil. I saw a couple little bubbles. If you don't have a dishwasher to put your jars in, you can put them in your canner and get them warm in there. I have also taken like boiling water and pour it in all my jars and empty it out as I go to use them. That's how my mom used to do it. So let's fill this first jar. Gotta get the liquid in there. The headspace for this recipe is a 1/2 inch, which is the middle ring on your jar. Okay. I'm going to debubble it. Probably could have put more of the solid in there. My debubbler has measurements on it, anywhere from 1 inch to 1/4 inch. So the 1/2 inch is right here. And I can put it on the edge. And the tip just touches the liquid or the whatever is in the jar. Then I know I'm at the right headspace. Always make sure you wipe the edge of your jar. If I'm canning meat, I use vinegar because that cuts the grease. This doesn't have any grease. It also gives you another opportunity to make sure there's no chips. So there's the lid, finger tight. In fact, you can just like that. You don't want to keep turning it after it goes to stop. Just let it go. Don't crank it on tight because that's what causes buckling, especially when you're pressure canning. That's when it causes a lot of issues. So, oh, I forgot something. I forgot the pickle crisp. Eighth of a teaspoon. So I need to get that in there. With this recipe, you want to make sure you wipe because you don't want any celery seeds to get stuck underneath there because that would prevent the seal from having. Put that lid back on. And there we go. And the water is heated up. Great. Okay, next canning jar. Pickle crisp. Will I forget? Gotta get the liquid in there now. Now debubble, go along all the sides, down the middle to let out any air pockets. And you gotta check your headspace after that. This did go down, so I have room to add a little bit more. Double check the headspace. And now wipe the rim. Put the ring on. finger tight. And that's 4 jars so far in there. There's a couple more at least. I'm going to continue filling them, and I'll bring you back when I have all the jars ready in the canner. I ended up with 6 pints, and I will lower this into the water bath now. The canner is at a full boil. I've set the timer for 15 minutes, and I'm going to put the lid back on and just let this roll. I like that I can see through this lid. I took the lid off, and now I'm just waiting for the boiling to stop and let it sit for just a few minutes. And one thing I would recommend is that you always set the timer for whatever your processing time is. It's real easy to think you looked at the clock and then second guess yourself or get distracted. So I always set a timer. This is going to sit with the lid off, temperature off, for 5 minutes. So I will set the timer, and when 5 minutes is up, we'll come back and lift them up, lift the rack up, and then remove the jars. It's been 5 minutes, and I'm going to lift up the rack. Here they all are to cool overnight. And I can't tell if any have sealed. That one hasn't. Looks like 4 have so far sealed and 2 have not. So we'll have to see if they seal as they cool. But thank you for joining me today at Pike Creek Farm while we process, well, this is called Dixie Relish by Ball, and it's basically a coleslaw mix, a vinegar-based coleslaw. If you like this video, please push the like button and subscribe to see more. Thank you very much, and we will see you soon.